Okay, fantastic. We'll go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everybody. We are thrilled that you're with us today to learn more about the special issue and discuss any questions you may have about what we're looking for and the process and timeline. First, introduce myself. I'm Jennifer Purcell, and I'm professor in the School of Government and International Affairs at Kennesaw State University. I'm here with my colleagues. Jeannie, will you go next, please?
Hi, I'm Jeannie McDonald. I'm the Associate Director in the Office for Outreach and Engagement at the University of Colorado Boulder.
Awesome. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Glad to have you here on this fabulous Friday. My name is Darlene Xiomara Rodriguez de Bello Schaefer, but you can call me Darlene. I am a faculty member along with Jennifer at Kennesaw State University, and I'm an associate professor in the Wellstar College of Health and Human Services, teaching social work and nonprofit management.
Thank you, Darlene. My name is Diane Doberneck. I work at Michigan State University in the Office of Outreach and Engagement, where I'm the Director for Faculty and Professional Development. Welcome, everybody.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Shannon Brooks. I work at the University of Georgia, where I'm the Director of the Office of Service Learning, but I'm also the editor of the Journal of Higher Education Outreach and Engagement. So I'm excited to work with this wonderful team of guest editors this year.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Brockway. I am a research assistant for Dr. Purcell and have worked with this group on this project now since spring this year, and I'm very excited about being here with you today.
Thank you, everyone, for your introductions. This session is meant to be a response to some of the inquiries that we've received and in terms of what we're looking for and some of the common questions that we've had. It's informal, so please know that this is a conversational. We're hoping that you will post questions throughout. If you will, please use the raise hand function or chat to post any questions that you may have. You've hopefully received the call for proposals and had a chance to review that. If we haven't already posted it in the chat, we will do so momentarily, so you have that to review as well. But the items that we're going to cover first before we get into dedicated Q&A time include the themes that we're covering in the special issue, the types of submissions that we are looking for, and those are reflecting those that are typically accepted by the journal, our process for review, our timeline, and then we have additional time for Q&A for any questions that you may have at that point. All right. First, we'll discuss our themes. Diane.
We have conceived of this special issue in a way that helps us explore 4 different themes. And you can see on the slide which we think of our identity, the intersectionality of our work. Our second theme looks at looking at next generation career pathways. Our third theme focuses on professional development and innovations. And our fourth and final theme focuses on wellness, well-being, and career sustainability. And it's important for our team as we think about this is to think about the different nuances that are happening in our careers and in our lives post-COVID pandemic. So know that that is okay to be addressing too. And in bold at the bottom, I think, is a key point of emphasis. As you think about writing for our special edition, we want to make sure that you emphasize the significance and the anticipated impact of this contribution. And so we really want to hear kind of how and why you think what you're sharing with us is going to make a difference to our field. Anything else to add on this one?
A couple of comments to add, Diane. One is that you may cover one or more of the themes, and that's okay. Just address that in your proposal. We know that there's a lot of overlapping at times depending on the topic, so that is perfectly fine. And that's the only other note that I have. Thank you.
All right, moving on to submission types, and I just have to warn you, I'm trying to run the Zoom meeting and do all this at the same time, so sometimes I get a little ahead of myself. So anyway, our submission types, we have 5 different submission types. As you can see here on the screen, we're calling for all these different types of articles: research articles, reflective essays, projects with promise, dissertation overviews, and book reviews. And you can see up here, I'm not going to read all this to you. You can see the full description here and the word count for each type that we're expecting. And this is also found in the call for proposals. So online, you can see all this information. There are, so one thing we want to make sure you guys realize is that one modification is that was the length of the reflective essay. This is a pilot innovation specific to this special issue, so that's why that's a little different. But the number of each of the types, we don't have a specific goal or formula we're going to be using. It really will be based on the proposals we receive and which ones are approved. For example, the current issue contains 5 research articles, 4 projects with promise, 1 reflective essay, and 1 dissertation overview, and 0 book reviews. So you can see it can be a mix bag. So we're not necessarily going off of a formula or anything like that. Any other comments, Jen?
Of maybe first-time authors, community engaged practitioners, people for whom writing a journal article isn't maybe the top thing that you do every week, and where your work might fit in is anywhere, but especially the reflective essay part. We have gotten permission to have some of those essays have a smaller word count in our particular special issue, compared to like a more traditional journal from, what am I trying to say? A volume from this journal. That is a special feature of our special issue.
One more comment on submission types. If you've looked at the options and you're trying to consider what's going to be the best fit for the project that you're considering, we're happy to hop on a call or exchange emails and workshop those and discuss options and find out what's going to be the best fit for you.
So to go along, Jeannie, you're doing great, no worries. To go along with information that has already been shared, both in the copper proposals with JHEOE and what we're sharing here today, know that this whole idea was conceptualized with the aim of actually practicing boundary spanning in the very conception to completion of the special issue. So you'll notice that we have 2 individuals who are part of professional staff roles at universities here who are in roles that do boundary spanning work, who are involved in community engagement, who have lead roles not only in their institutions, but within the Engagement Scholarship Consortium, with the scholarship workshop, as well as OEPN, who've had long histories of investment and servant leadership in the development of community engaged practitioners, scholars, students, and the like. And then you also have 2 other individuals who are equally committed, but have been having this more so in the role of faculty development and having a tenure track role and the study and the scholarship of community engagement in different permutations. So we want to help you see, at least from our perspective, even the inclusion of a student and having Shannon be a part of this from onset, it was truly trying to help people feel comfortable, welcomed, and invited to be a part of this, knowing that we want students, practitioners, individuals in the field that may be collaborative partners within institutions of higher education, along with faculty, to be able to submit to this special issue. And hence the accommodations that our colleagues are talking about have been, with the approval of Shannon, to be able to make it as inclusive as possible, knowing that the emphasis is on identity, and we all have different identities, both personally and professionally, that we boundary span, but also this idea of well-being and how challenging it has been, not only pre-COVID, but also during COVID, since COVID, and all the other things that have compounded when it comes to how your identity may have been affected by either social unrest, political instability, ideological differences. So just as a way of helping you see where we're coming from, we really do want to invite you to embrace your full self. And as a part of this, we want to make sure that as you submit the process as best as you can to what we've outlined. So that way you're given equal credit and equal footing when you make your submission. So on the slide, you'll be able to see that we have some expectations that are normally not part of the submission process, but it's to be able to have an easier entry, which is to be able to use Times New Roman font as an easy way to be able to standardize and use APA 7th edition, even though we come from different disciplines. And then to have a cover page where you identify from your perspective. And just like Jennifer said, if you need help, by all means, reach out to her as the lead editor to be able to work through what type it could be. But if you have an idea of what type it is or a combination thereof, tell us, give us a working title, and then a short bio for each of the contributors and all of their corresponding contact information. information. But with that, we also want to make sure that you have a second page in the submission that has a blinded review process of your abstract. And mind you, we ask for up to 1,000 words, knowing that normally abstracts or call for proposals have a shorter word count, but because we want to see how things tie together, we wanted to have a higher word count so you have more time to describe, explain, narrate the very things that are being shared about the quality, the significance, the tie into the special issue themes and its contribution. So please take advantage of the extra word count because we are looking for that to help us make decisions about prospective contributors and what a potential slate for this special issue could look like. And then ultimately, if you already have a manuscript and it is in your drawer, take it out. If it is in your, all the papers that you wrote that were never sent or never read, or journal entries, or even as a staff member, if you do a daily writing pages or devotional, or if you have like scribbled Post-it notes where you write things down as things come, that could be something that you could put together as well. So we want to make sure that you don't undersell what you know, because the whole purpose of this issue is to surface and raise up the things that are often taken for granted and are never really documented in some of these spaces where we boundary span almost organically. And this is a way to put credibility to the work that we do collectively that is really meaningful and requires institutional memory, and it requires disciplinary memory. So be encouraged if at the very least from this call, that's what you get, then hopefully you get it not only for the special issue, but for the work that you do on our campuses throughout the country. And if you're from another part of the world, then even more so. So please look at this information. But if you have a full manuscript, we would encourage you to submit it. Jennifer is receiving full manuscripts just as much as call for proposals. And if there is what I call Phoenix papers, something that needs to come back from the ashes, and resurrect it. Because there may have been a kernel of an idea that you first started, and you may be 10, 20 years older. You may be the start of a grad program, and you may be at the end of your grad program. You may have started in one job as a career service professional in student affairs, and now you've advanced to another role. Go back to that germ of an idea. We really do think that there's going to be a lot there for us to unpack together. So in the next slide, besides the submission process, is really the review process, which I've dovetailed both of them together just for sake of time, since we really want question and answers, is how we are proceeding. So Jennifer is going to be receiving all the proposals by September 1st. So we encourage you to submit by the deadline. And if you have an idea that you already have in the back of your head, put it in the chat, because that way you can crowdsource not only with us, but with Shannon. Because as the editor for JHEOE, hearing from her what would be a good fit either for the special issue or for a general issue is really helpful. But by the time October 1st rolls around, we will communicate to all of you as prospective authors. And notice that we're saying perspective on purpose. We want to make sure that people feel comfortable and welcome to submit, knowing that there may be a slate that does not include all of the final contributors. But if you have a submission that is worthy of us suggesting to Shannon, we will happily do that on your behalf. So know that throughout this process, we will be considering prospective authors until we actually go through the final copy editing process in 2024. You're going to be using the JHEOE system, which helps tremendously with just crowdsourcing information. But something that's really important is, as you submit your manuscripts, we're going to ask you to submit a list of potential reviewers for your manuscripts. So that way it allows us to find out who you think would be a good resource for us to do an internal round of review, both among us as special editors, but an external round of review for the quality and significance and the ranking and the disciplinary value that JHEOE already has. So as you see on the screen, if you are disciplined enough to ride this train with us, you should have a full publication by fall 2024. And we look forward to seeing what your questions are and answering however we best can today or in the months to come to make sure that you're successful. So thank you.
Jim, did you want to talk more about Susan's question in the chat? And then do we want to move on to Q&A or any more thoughts on review process and timeline?
Yeah, let's go ahead and address the question. So Susan, you asked if we were thinking of doing an essay and more towards the 1,000 to 2,000 word variety, shorter variety. It seems that a 1,000 word abstract is almost the essay. Am I misunderstanding? And let me clarify on my response as well. If you can go ahead and submit the 1,000 word proposal, which would capture the bulk of your essay. However, there's also the option just to have a shorter proposal. And in my conversation with others who are interested in writing a shorter piece, we've discussed the potential for a 500 word proposal. Keeping in mind that I still need to speak to the significance and anticipated impact of the piece, and providing enough context and information so that we can see how that contribution would weave into the themes that we've established for the special issue. Question from Melanie. Is there an option in the review process for receiving, revise, and resubmit opportunity for a manuscript? That's a really good question, Melanie. In fact, I don't know that we've been explicit in defining what option we may have for a revise and resubmit. The first round of reviews is looking for fit within the scope of the special issue. At that point, we'll invite full manuscripts. Once full manuscripts come in, we have another review, and then they go out for peer review. So not all full manuscripts that are submitted are guaranteed publication in the special issue. The benefit of us working with the JHEOE on this special issue is that if it's not a good fit necessarily for what we're doing with this project, it could be that you resubmit for the general call for the JHEOE, with the added benefit of having feedback that we're providing during this round of reviews. So in that regard, I would say that there is a space for revise and resubmit. I'll ask that we as an editorial team circle back after the call and discuss what our thoughts are around the revise and resubmit category specific to the special issue. Darlene has commented that this is a developmental process to your submission. So you submit as you can, and we'll be able to provide you with feedback to aid you in advancing your scholarship. Absolutely. We are here to support one another, not only in producing a high quality special issue, but also helping you to share your voice with our community. So certainly considering this developmental. You're welcome. And Jillian asked, can we share the origin of this idea for the special issue? And how did you all arrive at this idea and together on this? So I have a few words, but before I jump in, does anyone else want to share their thoughts on coming to the project? I'll jump in to get us started. So as a team, we have been collaborating with one another for many years, both in our practice and also in our scholarship. Boundary spanning is who we are. It's what we do. It's part of our identity. It's part of our scholarship. It's part of what we're trying to cultivate at our institutions, within our disciplines, and also with faculty and staff development. We've seen that there's an opportunity to advance the conversation around boundary spanning, specifically as we think about developing pipelines and a future trajectory for those that want to come into this work, because there are so many vastly unique and different pathways into community engaged work, particularly with professional roles. So we think it's important to document that, to have a conversation. There's been work previously. Lena Distilio did fantastic work with her team on competencies related to practitioners in community engaged work. And we are hoping to add to that conversation, adding the additional layers of where we've been and where we are now. And Darlene had spoken to the where we've been. Darlene and I had worked on a project a few years ago on, we named it the COVID shift. So with the experiences of working women in higher education, the impact of the COVID pandemic on their identities and work professionally. Thank you for sharing that, Darlene. And we saw that we didn't come through the COVID through COVID as the same people we were going in, right? So there was a marked shift in what we saw in our data in terms of how we identified as professionals, how we engaged with our work, and we suspected that we might have similar findings with community engaged professionals and scholars. And in our initial pilot data, we did. And so with that affirmation, we knew that we wanted to dig a little bit deeper and also see what our colleagues were doing. We don't think that we are the only ones that are pursuing these questions. We know that, based on conversations with you all and the interest that you have today, that there is a broad scope of work, and we would like to synthesize that and present it, document it, and also help inform continued research and practice.
And I would just add that I kind of got into this because I served as the co-chair for the Outreach Engagement Practitioners Network, which is part of the Engagement Scholarship Consortium, for over 7 years, and have been involved with that group for many years. And So that's really been a big focus of mine, not only on the national level with that group, but also bringing that back to my own campus of really focusing in on providing support and networking, breaking down those silos with the professionals that are on our campus. And so that's how I kind of got, you know, in league with Diane and Jen and Darlene. So that's kind of how I came into it.
So I've come into this project, I think, partly with a professional development hat on and the Pathways hat. I coordinate the graduate certification in community engagement on our campus, which is a professional development program, hoping to help strengthen skills and mindsets and practices for graduate students who may want to be community engaged, researchers, teachers, scholars, artists, activists. And so there are many, many pathways into community engagement, and I help my students understand that. But then there are many pathways that after you leave higher education or find another spot in higher education, take you in different directions. So I'm very excited about that one. That's one of the main ones I think about, as well as the professional development one. That's one of the other themes that I really like to think a lot about too, and the other hat that I wear. So those are some of my thoughts about the background. I think there's some really innovative professional development activities happening on our campuses and with our community partners that live in the land of practice and are not often written up and shared more broadly. So the rest of us don't have a chance to learn from your experience and think about what those might mean for the things that we are doing. So I would be personally especially excited to have people write up some of what they're doing in the helping us all learn together how to do this type of work. And then that theme, that's the one I'm super excited about.
So Jen, we have a question from Amy in the chat.
Amy asks, given the word limit of the proposal, how much should we discuss program details versus the need and impact? Excellent question, Amy. Enough details so that we understand the purpose and scope of the program. And I'm wondering if you could provide additional context, or maybe this is a conversation that we could have offline as well, depending on how comfortable you are with coming on mic or adding additional detail in the chat.
Something that I could add while Amy's considering typing is this a case study, for example, at one institution within one community of care or engagement that you all are part of? Or is it something, Amy, that you think would be a novel contribution to us for replication, right? Like this worked well at my institution. And so I want to share this as a good, better, or best practice to be tested out at other institutions or in other communities throughout the country to see if it yields similar or better results. So you would be the one who could better tell us if it's more of like, I want to highlight something and give props and a shout out in a reflective essay case study kind of experience. Or is it more of, you know, we had a methodology, we had a programmatic structure, we had a curriculum, and we did, you know, a logic model, for example, to see about outputs, outcomes, and impacts. And we really think this would be awesome for people to know about who do boundary spanning work. And so we want to make sure that this is a platform to share that through. Probably more of the latter, but you actually did a good job of answering my question. Okay, you're welcome. Glad to be of help. And just like we've had a couple of people know that we have devoted time to be together, including with Shannon. So take advantage of the fact that if you have a question for the perspective of the lead editor of JHEOE, not only of this special issue, but if you've been contemplating submitting something to the larger body of work, by all means, feel free to ask it here. I know she would be more than happy to hear from prospective authors and submitters or possible reviewers or just people who are engaging in her periodical. But at the same time, this is kind of like having a mini conference session at, you know, ESC, you know, meet with the editor. So if you have a question, take advantage of it now. That way you can maximize the time between now and the first, if this is a good fit for you. And if not, then you have time to think about submitting for the larger volume or other similar high-ranked journals that do this type of scholarly contribution. And you see Shannon's giving a shout out. She's like, I always love to hear from new peeps down the street. You know, she's very devoted to emerging professionals as much as it is for those who are established. And one of the things, you know, Jennifer has been contemplating was how can the issue not only boundary span us, but also boundary span those who came before us, who established the terminology, who established this way of thinking, being, living, doing, and new individuals who can help us see things differently. You all have ideas that we have yet to come up with. And so we really are open to hearing what innovations are taking place or what seeds of ideas could really be a Kickstarter, a catalytic when it comes to community engagement as a body of people who are really devoted to various forms of community engagement, but also the study, the scholarship, the teaching, and the living of it as well.
And Shannon, would you be willing to respond to Diane's question that was entered in the chat to say a little bit more about the expected amount of theory or connections to broader scholarship in the reflective essays, just the general expectations for the journal?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So I think typically, and this is probably a good, it's always a good idea to peruse things we've previously published. Reflective essays are sort of an interesting section in our journal because they are very different from one another. So, you know, I think we all sort of have an idea in mind of what we mean by a research article, and even our projects with Promise is a little bit more, you can kind of get your hands around it, but the reflective essays really do kind of run the gamut. But I would say that it is important to have some connection to you know, theory or, you know, at least broader community engagement scholarship that you are sort of jumping from. Very often those articles sort of are pivoting to new topics within the community engagement, or perhaps sort of maybe even controversial or, you know, provocative topics that you might be talking about on your campus or in your community. And so they really run the gamut, but they shouldn't just be, you know, occasionally we get some and they read more like op-eds than they do reflective essays. And so that is where I would say is kind of the dividing line. They do need to be grounded still in some form of theory or connection to current scholarship in community engagement. So but usually it's, you know, you would do similar to what you would do. You would kind of ground it, and this is where I'm coming from, have a, you know, brief lit review and be like, this is the new idea that I'm exploring through this essay, or things that I'm thinking about that we have not talked about in scholarship yet. So I'm not sure if that answers the question. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Shannon. And Jillian posted another question. So my submission is coming from work outside of the United States with my partners. Are there any considerations you can offer for contributing that piece? I actually asked Darlene to respond based on the work that she recently did with another special issue.
Sure. I mean, we currently are doing a special issue with a sister, I would say, entity, which is the Journal of Community Engagement and Scholarship out of Alabama. And one of the things that we did was, although our special issue was focused in the United States, we did get contributions from other countries, and they brought in a perspective about the United States from an outside point of view, which was really informative and novel and something that we hadn't even thought about. And so I would say the same thing here is, if you're bringing into a piece, Jillian, that is outside of the United States and you're doing community engaged, boundary spanning work, it's going to open up readers for JHEOE to consider, oh, well, how does that show up in other contexts and in other settings? This could help with international staff and faculty and students. It could help with international NGOs that we may be partnering with, internships, cooperatives. So there's a place where maybe your scholarship could help, not just in advancing your scholarship, but just even how we conceptualize boundary spanning, because it may vary based on where you are writing from and who you are speaking to. So I would always be of an advocate to say, if you have an idea and you took the time on a Friday afternoon to come to this info session, there's probably something there that is worth for us to look at, and we would be fortunate to receive your proposal. And if there's something that needs to be modified or changed because it isn't a good fit for this special issue, then we can at least make recommendations of prospective other journal outlets that could be a good fit for it based on what we receive in your abstract proposal. So as someone who does work that does comparative, I value that. And I know that our colleagues value having innovation, and your contribution may be a part of that innovation.
All right, Jamie asks, thinking projects with promise, sharing how we as university researchers work with policymakers and key stakeholders to identify childcare deserts and monitor resource allocations along the way. Short-term impact is the development of monitoring systems and organizational partnerships. We'll share lessons learned, plans for sustainability and long-term impact. Can this work? I would ask, how did the implications, lessons learned, the findings from this work, how do they inform the themes that we've identified? What are the connections to the themes and the broader umbrella of the special issue? And I think because we are so deeply embedded in this work as both scholars and practitioners, we see that there are connections to be found. So I think that's part of where it could be a conversation where we hop on a call and say, well, have you thought about it this way? Or have you looked at this body of literature? These two articles may inform and may have you thinking about your work in a different way. I'm going back to see if I explicitly, so there's not specific connection to any theme presented as is. So I would say just drawing those connections and making that clear and providing a compelling argument in your proposal. Diane asks, were you thinking that childcare links to family wellness? So Jamie, while you're thinking about that, and if you'd like to type additional details or come on microphone if you'd like, you're welcome to come on audio and video. Darlene reminds us that for all prospective submissions, make sure that it's explicit. You don't want us to assume the connections you're making. This will help make a compelling argument, not only for us, but for future readers. Absolutely, thank you.
Do you think, Darlene, it would be even helpful to have like a little subheading, connection to journal theme, and just like really call that out so it's clear? Okay. If that fits your writing style, of course.
And, as you marinate on what we've shared today, additional questions may surface. Feel free to email any of us, and I have our contact information in a future slide. We are all happy to discuss, exchange emails, or again, hop on a call if that's easy and convenient. Happy to do it. Stacy says, very interested, but the timeline may not line up for me. Bummer, Stacy. But certainly knowing that there are plenty of opportunities for additional submissions for the general call with the journal and our sister journal as well. Sister journal being the Journal of Community Engagement and Scholarship.
And for Jillian, since she's already gotten a couple thumbs up and she's like, it's a bummer. Part of the reason why we're doing this special issue is because you got no time to write. Like, just plain and simple, y'all. You got no time to write. You're too busy with the hustle of managing school, operations, administration, community coalitions, personalities, conflicts. I mean, we're busy people and life isn't easy, and it takes time for us to discipline ourselves to just stop and be selfish and think for ourselves and actually write about what we're thinking. We do this for our students, we do this for our colleagues, but we very rarely do this for ourselves. So we would argue that although if it does not align with your time and that is genuine, that it's because you need to be focused on priorities and focus on your priorities and do them well. That if it is because you just don't think that you have the time to write, or you don't think you have the capacity to say something that's worthwhile to put in print, let us help unearth your lack of confidence and help us encourage you with full confidence that JHEOE would not have allowed us to do this special issue if they didn't think we would be of support in a developmental capacity to help you, or if they did not want to encourage people who otherwise don't submit, but may read their journal, to actually have a voice in the discipline, in the field, in the training of emerging professionals and our community colleagues. So we would encourage you that if you are on the fence, and even after this gathering, you're still kind of, I have something to say, but I don't know what it is. Know this, whatever it is that's lighting a fire inside of your belly, write it down. If you need to make it easy for yourself, we all got these things. Send yourself a voice recording of your ideas. Give yourself a chance to do a Microsoft Teams meeting by yourself. Add the record function with the transcript. Download it, you already have it written down. Organize it according to the format, and boom, bada bing, you got the beginnings of an idea. Now you just need to polish it up. So all of you have a story worth telling, and all of you have a voice that needs to be shared, no matter what position you have and what identities you occupy. So we just want to make sure that if you didn't feel like you had a place at the table, know that you're welcome at this one.
Again, thank you all for joining. If there's any other questions, don't hesitate to share those now. We'll still be on for a few more minutes. If you would like the recording, please email us directly and we can get that to you. And any additional notes that we have from questions that were raised. I believe there was a question regarding the revise and resubmit, and if we're going to have a specific category. So we'll follow up on that question as well. And thank you all for taking time on your Friday to join us. As Darlene said, and others, if you're here with us on a Friday afternoon and you're feeling that this is of interest to you, there's a story there to tell, and we would love to help you share that within the field. You are welcome. Hope you all have a fantastic afternoon and a wonderful weekend as well.